So I wanted to talk about the 20% weight rule. And for those of you who don't know what the 20% weight rule, it is you should not weigh more than 20% of your horse's body weight. So if you have a 1,000-pound horse, you shouldn't weigh more than 200 pounds because it'll be uncomfortable for that horse to carry you. A lot of people don't understand that even where that rule came from, a lot of people live by it as some golden rule, and it's not. Where that rule came from was back when mounted soldiers, there was a lot of guys riding horses for the military and the army, and someone said, how do we know when a guy weighs too much for a horse? And someone basically said, I don't know, 20% of the horse's body weight. And that's basically how the rule came about. There was no scientific research or data or anything done to come up with this rule. I wouldn't even call this a guideline, let alone a rule, because there are too many variables that come into play with the rider and the horse themselves, each individual person and each individual horse, that whether or not that horse is going to be able to carry X amount of weight comfortably. Some of the things that you need to take in consideration with each individual horse is the age of the horse, the breed of each horse, the physical fitness of each horse, and general overall health of each horse. So you could see that there's a lot of variables that just come into play for the horses alone, let alone when you integrate riders into it as well. The overall key factor that comes into play is general health of the horse and physical fitness of the horse. Is that horse in shape or not? If you take two identical horses, but one of them has actually been ridden and exercised and put in shape, whereas one has been left sitting out in the pasture just grazing and not been worked with, the one that's in shape, that is physically fit, is going to have an easier time, that has been conditioned, is going to have an easier time carrying more than 20% of its body weight. Whereas the one that has been left sitting out in the pasture, it's going to have a hard time just going out and exercising, let alone carrying a rider. For example, me, right now, I'll give you an example. Right now, about 20% of my body weight is 30 pounds. And so if I were to put a 30-pound pack on my back and go out and go hike up the side of a mountain, I wouldn't be able to make it more than 20 feet at a time without being out of breath. And I might hike 100 feet up that mountain and then be done for the day, and I'm going to be sore the next day by carrying 30 pounds. But if I went out there and did it every day with a 30-pound pack, by the end of the month, I'd be able to do it no problem without a breeze, and I wouldn't be sore the next day. If I conditioned my body to do that, it would be perfectly fine carrying a 30-pound, something that is 20% over my body weight. And then over time, I would be able to carry more than 30 pounds. I'd be able to carry 40, 50, 60 pounds. I mean, think about the people who go on hikes and they hike long distances through the mountains. They carry 30, 40-pound packs that are more than 20% of their body weight. But if they condition themselves for that journey to do that job, then they're not going to have any issues at all going on that hiking trip with a pack that is more than 20% of their body weight. With all these different key factors with horses that vary completely specifically from each individual horse to the next, you also need to come into play the rider themselves. And the weight of the rider isn't necessarily important, but it's the ability of that rider. Now say I was going out and hiking again with my pack. I got a really nice pack that when I put it on my back, it just feels like it is formed to my body. And it doesn't matter if I'm jumping from rock to rock. It doesn't matter if I take big steps up or down. That pack is moving with me. And you don't even really notice it's there. You're in shape. You've walked with that 40-pound pack. You don't even notice it anymore because it moves with your body. It's a good quality pack and it rides with you. Now, if I were to take a pack that is unbalanced or moves in the opposite direction every single time I move, so when I take a step this way, the pack is leaning in a way that's throwing me off balance, or if it's just moving weird, if you put a small child in that pack and that small child's just moving around and doing everything and it feels like it's working against you, even though I am conditioned to carry a 40-pound pack, it is now 100 times more difficult and I'm going to be out of breath and I'm going to be sore because the pack isn't riding with me. The pack isn't working with me and it doesn't know how to sit comfortably on my back and work with me. It's the same with a rider. If you get on a horse and you don't know how to ride, you're going to make that horse sore and you're going to make it even more difficult for that horse to complete a task. So take Reba, for example. She's I would say an average sized horse. If I were to take somebody that is 90 pounds, well under the 20% weight, and put them on Reba, but they didn't know how to ride a horse, every single time that she took a step trotting, that person is just slamming into her back. Every single time that she loped, that person's just slamming into her back. If that person went out and rode her for 15 minutes, all 3 gaits, and every single time she took a step in the gait, that person is just whacking into her back. The next day, even that night, she's going to be pretty sore. But if I take someone that is 250 pounds and put them on her, but that person knows how to ride a horse, they are well above that 20% weight limit for her, and they went out and rode her for 2 hours, but they knew how to ride and stick with a horse and move their body with the horse, she's not going to be sore carrying that rider around versus the 90-pound rider that was way underneath the 20% weight limit. So you can see how there are way too many variables that come into play that you can literally say 20% is the limit when it comes to horses. With horses alone, age, gender, overall health, and physical fitness come into play. I mean, you got a horse that's been used and conditioned, they can carry well over 20% of their body weight versus a horse that's not conditioned. A 5-year-old is going to be able to carry more than 20% of their weight more comfortably than a 30-year-old or a 1-year-old, obviously. And then even when it comes to the riders, the ability of the riders, the fit of the tack for that person as well with that horse, there are way too many factors that come into play that you can solidly say 20% is a rule. There's too many things, too many variables. There is no set limit. There is no set guideline on whether a person is too heavy or not too heavy for a horse. Because like I said, I would rather put a 250-pound, 300-pound rider that knows how to ride horses on my mares and on my horses than I would rather put a 90-pound person who is light that doesn't know how to ride. Because I would rather have somebody that knows how to move with a horse and ride them than someone who's going to sit there and slam into my horse's back all day long. And when it comes down to it, if you actually do the math on a lot of people and their horses, a majority of people are actually over that 20% weight rule with their horses. Right now, with me being pregnant, I am borderline with my tack, my saddle, and everything. I am right at that limit of 20% weight when it comes to riding Reba. And by looking at it, honestly, for me, I wouldn't say that I am borderline. If I gain 5 more pounds, I am overweight for riding Reba just by looking. And with Fillinick, I'm actually well over the 20% weight limit for this little red dun right here. I'm well over the 20% weight limit according to her weight for me right now being pregnant. I should be riding according to that rule. The only ride right now is Cricket because the other horses I exceed that weight limit. So you can see how this rule is absolutely ridiculous. When it comes down to it, if you include your tack, a majority of people are going to exceed that 20% weight rule when they know that their horses are more than comfortable and capable carrying them around and riding them. You could see how it's just, you know, it's not really a rule, it's not a guideline. In general, it's a lack of common sense, I would say, because in reality, where the rule came from, just like I said, when someone said, what should we do for a weight limit for these horses in the military? And someone said, I don't know, 20% of their weight. There was no scientific evidence, there was no scientific research or anything. It was basically a number that was thrown out there so that they had some sort of rule and guideline for the military when it came to riding horses.